All right, now we want to add validation to this form. So first I want to make all these fields required, but also for the price, I want to add a custom validation to ensure that the value is at least 0. Maybe we want to give some products for free, but we cannot have a price that is, let's say, -$1. It doesn't make sense. Also, I want to make sure that this image URL is a valid URL. Now, Angular at the time of recording this video doesn't have built-in validation for validating URLs and number ranges. So for these two scenarios, we're going to use a separate library, and that's the topic for the next lecture, because as I said before, we want to build things step by step. So in this lecture, let's make all these fields required. And if everything works, then in the next lecture, we'll add custom validation to this form. So back to our form, here's our first input field. I want to apply the required attribute here to make it required. Now we should also give this input field a template variable like title, and we set this to ng model. As we explained in the section about template-driven forms, now we can use this variable to see if this input field is touched, whether it's invalid, whether it's dirty or not. So right after this input field, I'm going to add a div for displaying our validation errors. I'm going to give it two bootstrap classes, alert and alert-danger. And I want to render this only if this title is touched and it's invalid. Okay, so that's why we defined this title variable here. We set it to ng model so we can see if this title field is touched and invalid. Now here we say title is required. Now, before going any further, let's test the application up to this point. So initially we don't have any errors. If I put the focus here, the field is touched. Now if I tab away, we get this error. And if I go back and type something, beautiful, the error is gone. Now I'm going to repeat the same approach for other input fields. So here is our price input field. Once again, I'm going to apply the required attribute and give it a template variable called price and set it to ng model. Then I'm going to add a div with two classes, alert and alert-danger. And here we add this error message, price is required. And we want to render this only if this price is touched and it's invalid. Now one more time for the category. So here's our select. We make it required, give it a template variable called category, and set it to ng model. Then we add our div with alert and alert-danger classes. We want to render this only if category is touched and category is invalid. And the error is category is required. You might think I'm typing too fast, but honestly, I don't want to waste your time because all these steps are repetitive. And while you may think I'm typing too fast, there are other students who get bored watching these repetitive steps, but I have no choice but typing them here. So the last field, our URL, image URL. Let's make this required. Give it a template variable, image URL, set it to ng model, and finally a div with two classes. And we want to render this if image URL is touched and it's invalid. And the error is image URL is required. Now let's test the form. So tab, we get the error, beautiful. Tab, here's a second error, but it looks a little bit ugly in terms of how it's rendered. We're going to come back and fix this issue in a second. So let's move on. Tab, here's the category error, and finally the image URL. So let's see what's happening with this error message for the price field. All right, I realized that I put this div, our alert div, inside the input group. We use input group to add this add-on. So I should take this div outside and put it right after the input group. This will fix the layout issue. So in this lecture, we made all these fields required. In the next lecture, we're going to take this validation to the next step and add some more complex validation.